Hey, fellow peer, reader, and knowledge sponge. Welcome back to another episode where we unlock the secrets to leveling up your skills and mindset. If you caught our last episode, you know we've been diving into an incredible online course from the prestigious Harvard University. And guess what? This isn't just any course, it's taught by none other than the legendary Harvard professor James Engel. Now, let me tell you, Professor Engel isn't just your average scholar. His expertise spans across literature, economics, science, and even environmental studies. And here's the mind-blowing part, he's been teaching at Harvard since the 1970s. That's nearly 50 years of shaping minds and contributing to some of the most important academic conversations out there. Currently, he holds the title of Gurney Professor of English and Professor of Comparative Literature at Harvard. With a career like his, you can't help but wonder, what kind of impact has he made on his field and beyond? And that's exactly what we're going to explore in this series. Sarah, as a big fan of Professor Engel, could you share how his insights translate into a course about mastering writing and public speaking?
Professor Engel chaired departments at Harvard that are completely different. English, history, and literature, even comparative literature. He's not just an academic then. He's more like a modern-day Renaissance person, deeply involved in a bunch of fields. And you can really see that in his publications. Well, take a look. The creative imagination forming the critical mind, and these titles alone, it's clear he's grappling with these big questions, like how do we think? How do we create? How do we even engage with the world around us? Big stuff. And this is the interesting part. It's not just about abstract ideas with him. He co-authored this book with Anthony Dangerfield called Saving Higher Education in the Age of Money. Okay. And that book won a big award for its perspective on, all the challenges facing liberal arts education today. So we're talking about what? Developing well-rounded individuals, people who can think critically, apply those skills in different fields. And it seems like Professor Engel and Dangerfield, they're not just concerned with the ideas. They're concerned with the practical side of education too, like how do we actually make this work? The key is that he's not afraid to tackle real-world issues then. And that makes his work on this environment an interdisciplinary anthology even more interesting. Think about it. How does a literature scholar approach a topic like environmental studies? It's fascinating. Literature is full of stories about, humanity's relationship with nature, ancient myths, modern novels, it's all there. Professor Engel, he probably brings this totally unique perspective to environmental issues. Like he's drawing on centuries of, cultural reflection on these themes. It actually reminds me of his work editing Samuel Taylor Coleridge's Biographia Literaria and William Wordsworth's The Prelude. Both of those, they're really concerned with nature and human experience. It's like all these different interests, they're all connected somehow. And maybe those connections, that's what led him to becoming a fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. It's an incredibly prestigious organization, recognizes contributions across all these different disciplines. And on top of that, he's a senior fellow at the National Humanities Center too, so his influence goes way beyond just Harvard. What we're seeing with Professor Engel's career, it's like it's possible to be both a specialist and a generalist. You could be really knowledgeable in one specific field, but still be able to connect that knowledge to other fields in ways you wouldn't expect. That's exactly what it shows. It challenges that whole idea that you have to pick, breadth or depth. Professor Engel's career suggests that maybe by embracing all these different interests, we can actually understand complex issues better. So thinking about Professor Engel's work, what connections can you make between fields that, at first glance, seem totally separate? Could your knowledge of the field be different? Could your knowledge in one area make your understanding of another field even better, even if they seem totally unrelated? I think it's safe to say that Professor Engel's career is a testament to the power of, intellectual curiosity and the unexpected connections that can pop up when we think outside our own little boxes. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the world of Professor Engel. Hopefully, it'll inspire you to explore the connections between your own interests, no matter how different they may be.
Thanks, Sarah. Now, Module 1 is all about laying the foundation for mastering the art of rhetoric, persuasive writing, and public speaking. Trust me, by the end of this series, you'll see communication in a whole new light. So, buckle up, and let's get started. We will start the module by breaking it into key concepts. The 3 modes of appeal. The first is logos, appeal to reason. Logos sounds like it has something to do with the logic, it is appealing to reason. To illustrate the difference, deductive reasoning is working from a general principle down to specific instances, I call it top-down logic. While inductive reasoning goes the other way, it does starting with observations and then drawing a broader conclusion, right from the ground up. Let's consider the democracy example. Many powerful and prosperous nations are democracies. So it leads you to consider if democracy itself might be a factor in their success, could be an inductive leap. The next one is ethos, ethical appeal, establishing your credibility as a speaker, building trust with your audience. Example, if I'm trying to persuade someone about a scientific concept, using accurate scientific language makes your argument more convincing because it shows you understand the subject. And finally, pathos, the appeal to the audience's emotions. Inspiring hope or even stirring up some fear or anger, we see it all the time, right? Like advertising a political campaign for sure. Do you need all 3 every time? Not necessarily. Okay, the key is to understand your audience and choose the appeals that work best for them. Do you need all 3 every time? Not necessarily. Okay, the key is to understand your audience and choose the appeals that work best for them. This module continues to discuss how to structure a persuasive argument like an outline or a framework. It's not just about the ingredients, you need the right structure, you need to put them together effectively. And the following 5 classical parts of a composition are the building blocks of your argument, known as dispositio, arrangement of arguments; exordium, the introduction, and it is where you hook the audience; narratio, that's where you set the stage, provide context, paint a picture for your audience, so they understand the background of the issue you're addressing; confirmatio, that's where you present your main arguments and evidence. This is where logos really shine. But even a really strong argument also face objections. That's where refutatio comes in. So you're preemptively striking down any counter-arguments they might have, you're showing you've thought things through from multiple angles, that you're not just pushing your own agenda. It builds ethos too. And then finally, you wrap it all up with the what's the Peroratio, the conclusion of your grand finale. It's about leaving a lasting impression. Next, the stylistic tools, think of them like spices. They add flavor and impact to your language, making it more persuasive and memorable. Let's start with diction, which is all about word choice. It's important to strike a balance between using fancy language to sound more authoritative, and simple language to be more relatable. It depends on your audience and your goal. Because overly ornate language can come across as pretentious, and overly simple language might not convey the level of expertise. You need to find that sweet spot. The second spice is syntax, which is all about the arrangement of words and phrases in a sentence. Think about it as using short punchy sentences to create a sense of urgency, or long flowing sentences to build suspense. And then there are schemes and tropes. They add flavor and impact to your language like spices. Remember? Asyndeton, which is when you omit conjunctions in a list, creates a sense of speed and power. That famous quote from Julius Caesar, "I came, I saw, I conquered." Polysyndeton is another scheme. It creates a slower, more deliberate rhythm. Here is an excerpt from the book of Genesis. "And God made the beasts of the earth according to their kinds, and the cattle according to their kinds, and everything that creeps upon the ground according to its kind. And God saw that it was good." It gives the text a solemn and weighty tone. Tropes are slightly different, they shift the literal meaning of words to create a unique effect. Metaphors, a type of trope, compare two things without directly using like or as. Example, life is a journey. This metaphor suggests a comparison without explicitly stating it. That's the power of metaphor. It adds depth and vivid imagery to your language, making it more evocative and memorable. However, metaphors can sometimes become overused and turn into clichés, so it's important to use them thoughtfully. Now, how do we put all this together? Let's analyze a classic, Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech. As an exercise, try annotating passages from the speech that resonate with you the most. Feel free to pause this video while you complete the exercise. Welcome back. So, what stood out to you? Was it the way he uses pathos to evoke deep emotions, ignite hope for unity, or inspire a longing for justice? He truly paints a vivid picture of a better future with metaphors galore, doesn't he? Here are my annotation to the passages I chose from the speech. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. A perfect analogy. The long night symbolizes the oppression and injustice endured, while joyous daybreak signifies hope, freedom, and justice. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. A vivid description of the stark inequities of the time. The metaphor of a lonely island highlights isolation and exclusion, while the vast ocean underscores the disparity in wealth and opportunity. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. A pointed and powerful argument. It emphasizes the nation's failure to deliver on the promise of unalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for citizens of color. This module has equipped you with a whole new set of tools, and that's a great start. But with these tools comes a responsibility. It's not just about winning arguments, it's about using these skills ethically and for the greater good. That's what truly matters. Thanks for joining us on this journey. In the description of this video, you'll find links to the Module 1 Rhetoric Study Guide, along with exercises and assignments. I've also included links to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech in both PDF and MP3 formats.